You're tuning in to Luminal on the Wall. Welcome. I'm your host, Becky, and joining me always is my co-host and beautiful sister, Bevy.
In our podcast, we will take a deep dive into the evil side of humanity. We will talk about suspicious deaths, shoddy investigations, and all the gory details in between.
But be warned, we will not hesitate to call BS when we hear it, which means you may not always agree with us, but we promise to lay out the evidence so you can come to your own conclusions based on what is presented.
Listeners' discretion is advised. Hey, Becky.
What's up, Bev?
Chilling like a villain.
Of course you are, because you a villain.
Excuse yourself. If I'm the villain, you're the super villain, okay?
Ah.
That's right. Speaking of super villains, when we get into this case, it's about a freaking serial killer, our first one yet.
Yeah, this freaking story's crazy.
I know. I'm so excited to read it. Becky wrote it, but she's tired AF, so she wants to be the listener tonight.
So Bev's going to hopefully read it with a little more zest than I would at the moment.
Pizzazz, if you will.
Shazam!
I'm going to have a little bit of pizzazz. Why did I say it like that? I was like, pizzazz. I don't know what that was. Holy shit, Becky. You and your sounds. That's so funny. Anyways,
All right, well, Bev,
what's up with you?
oh, like you said, I'm so tired. However, I just came from a really good workout in the park.
Yeah.
With a group I train. We had these adorable children join us. Last week, the little boy just showed up because there was a soccer game happening. He's watching his brother. He wanted to be the strongest boy. And so he just walked over, started lifting dumbbells.
Mm-hmm.
This week, he brought his sister.
Oh.
There's something so just awesome about inspiring children to lift weights and be excited about exercise.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think that should happen more in the world, but I'm glad I could facilitate.
He was like, I had such a fun time with the ladies in the park. You got to come see this, sis.
I quote him. He's like, I'm stronger now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's so cute.
Oh, yeah. It was
oh
adorable.
my gosh, I love that. All right, well, speaking of children, I mean...
Speaking of
this
children,
is going to be a stark contrast. I was going to say, like, we're talking about children, and now let me get into the talk about a serial killer here.
Yeah, something so precious to something so sinister.
Yeah, holy crap.
Well, Bev, lay it on me.
This case begins on January 31st, 1939 in Webster, South Dakota. Henry and Eileen Brunos joyfully welcomed their baby boy, naming him Jerome Henry Brunos, also known as Jerry. Jerry came into the world as the second of two sons. However, his mother had hoped for a daughter instead, and unfortunately, this longing fueled resentment within her, leading to years of emotional and physical abuse that Jerry would have to endure.
Poor little guy.
Right? In order to humiliate Jerry, she would dress him up as a girl whenever he misbehaved. Regrettably, Jerry's older brother, Larry, experienced love and affection from their mother, quite the opposite of Jerry's treatment. So, during Jerry's childhood, the Brunos family relocated numerous times across the Pacific Northwest. Eventually, they would settle down in Salem, Oregon. And in 1944, when Jerry was only 5 years old, his family noticed something distinctive about him. He seemed to have developed a little bit of an obsession with shoes. But what was interesting was that Jerry was quite particular in the type of shoes that he was fond of. He was obsessed with women's shoes. So, yeah. So one day, he had found a pair of stilettos in a junkyard that caught his eye. He was so intrigued by these stilettos that he brought them home with him. Eventually, his mother noticed these stilettos, and her reaction was nothing short of being enraged. She screamed at him to take those back to the dump.
Not his shoes, not his stilettos.
Right? But little Jerry loved these shoes. Oh. He didn't want to take them back to the dirty dump.
No, he didn't.
So he tried to hide them from his mother instead. But his mother, with her keen eyes, found the shoes yet again, But this time, she made sure these shoes disappeared for good and burnt them to a crisp. Something switched in Jerry's brain the day his mother burned those shoes. He was no longer just obsessed with the idea of women's shoes, but instead he was consumed by it. He began collecting women's shoes by stealing them. He became brazen in his attempts to steal women's shoes and had even tried to steal his first grade teacher's high heel shoes at one point.
What that teacher must have been thinking, like, why are you taking my shoes, little guy? Like, what's wrong with you?
As I was reading this, I was thinking, when would he have gotten the opportunity? What teacher takes their shoes off at work?
Oh, she had a second pair.
Oh, there you go.
So he was like, here's my chance.
He sees them. He's like,
taking those bad boys.
I got the opportunity. I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't successful, obviously. His obsession didn't stop with women's shoes. Jerry was also obsessed with women's underwear.
Uh-oh.
Right? It's like, oh, that's a little different.
At the age of 5?
He's a young creep. As he did with the shoes, he also began stealing his female neighbor's underwear.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, this boy's obsession grew into what could be called a fetish. It was no longer a harmless obsession. It became an impassioned obsession fueled by sexual arousal. In Jerry's teenage years, there were a lot of concerns about his mental health, and throughout the course of his adolescence, he was a patient at many mental hospitals where he received psychotherapy. Even though Jerry had received psychotherapy, it did little to change his obsessive behaviors. And when Jerry was 17, he began stalking local women.
Oh, God.
It's only getting worse.
It is getting so much worse, Bevy.
Get this. He would knock them down, choke them until they were unconscious, and then he'd flee with their shoes.
You can actually see step by step over his, the years of his progression in his aggressiveness.
Yeah, totally.
In each crime.
Yeah, it just
it really progresses.
Stealing the shoes just isn't enough anymore. He has to choke someone unconscious and then steal their shoes. So at this point, it is obvious that Jerry's crimes are beginning, as you said, to escalate to an extremely dangerous place. And unfortunately, it doesn't get better and becomes even more calculated. Jerry has now decided that he wants to attempt to keep his victims as sex slaves after attacking them. Jerry literally digs a hole along a hillside and seriously thinks that this is where he will keep his quote-unquote sex slaves.
In his hillside dungeon with no door.
Yes.
Logical.
Super logical. Once Jerry finishes digging this freaking hole, he finds his victim. He abducts a teen girl at knife point, beats her up, and forces her to take naked photos of herself for him. Thankfully, Jerry's plan, as we mentioned, was not well thought out, and this perp gets caught super quick. He is once more taken to the psychiatric ward of Oregon State Hospital and ends up staying for 9 whole months.
9 months, Bev?
Yes, sirree.
Whoa.
During this time, he undergoes evaluation with regards to his deviant, violent, and sadistic behaviors. What the doctors found is that Jerry's sexual fantasies revolved around his hatred towards his mother. I mean, no doubt.
Makes sense.
As well as women in general.
She ruined him for them all. Ruined it for them all.
Yep. What do they say is your image of your parents or your opposite gender parent kind of molds what you look for in a woman in some Freudian type shit. You look for your mother in your relationships.
That is what they say, isn't it?
That's what Freud says. So, on top of this, he had actually told the doctors about his collection of women's clothing, and he was also very candid about disturbing fantasies that he was having. He told them that he fantasized about kidnapping women and putting them in freezers so that he could orientate their bodies into sexually erotic positions and have them stay that way. He gets pleasure out of them being in a certain position. That's weird.
Yeah, but dead.
Yeah.
Wow, this guy has some issues. Good thing he's in a psychiatric hospital.
At least momentarily, because this fantasy doesn't really seem to be a cause of concern in regards to Jerry's crime against the young girl that initially got him in the psych ward. but instead caused the doctors to come up with a diagnosis or a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And that's all that it really chalked up to be.
Did they have like a treatment plan going forward?
No. Nada.
Just like, you're diagnosed, you can go now.
Yep.
Wow. I mean, I guess it was, what, the 50s?
Yeah. It was pretty, like, a long time ago, so...
I guess things are
I mean, they could have given him medication. But either way, it really just amounted to not much. A diagnosis, and you can be on your merry way, Jerry.
Don't freeze any women.
Yeah. Not that we're even concerned about it. It's just part of your diagnosis.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Got to go.
That's fucked.
Totally fucked.
Oof.
So he finishes his stay at the psychiatric ward just in time to graduate high school with his class, despite having been hospitalized for most of his grade 12 year. And in 1957, he was released into the public with no qualms about his previous infractions.
I don't even know what to say to that. Like, it's just like, here's my diploma and my psychiatric stay. Hire me, or let me go to school.
Let me live life normally.
Doesn't matter.
Only beat up a girl and wanted her to be my sex slave. Literally dug a hole in the side of a hill for her. I don't know. It just seems like that was a lot of intent to really...
And like 9 months of work too, just to be like, okay, be on your merry way.
Yeah. I mean, 9 months isn't a small amount of time, but I don't know. It feels like everything he told them at the psych ward would be a bigger cause for concern than what they made it out to be.
Yeah, it's rather insignificant.
Yes, ma'am. So in March of 1959, 2 years after his high school graduation, Jerry joins the Army.
Ooh.
However, his stint in the Army was very short, and just a couple of months later, in October of the same year, he was discharged for a reason that was not made public. After leaving the military, Jerry became an electronics technician, and in 1961, he met his wife, Darcy Metzler. Darcy was a little younger than Jerry and was 17 years old when they met. They ended up having 2 children together, Megan and Jason, and they would live together in a suburb in Salem, Oregon. And at this point in the case, it seems that despite Jerry's earlier troubles, he is living an average American life. Yeah,
it sounds like he kind of has his shit together.
Yeah, his friends even described him as a devoted family man, saying that he didn't drink or smoke and that he almost never used profanity.
Not even profanity.
Well, fuck. No, I'm just kidding. However, isn't it often the case that just when you believe someone's life is taking a positive turn, everything ends up going to shit?
Yep, that's pretty much how it happens.
Wow. That is exactly what happens. Jerry couldn't continue neglecting his devious desires. They were burning a hole in his soul and his marriage.
Well, of course they were.
He began asking his wife to do household chores naked, but insisted that she wear one item. Any guesses as to what that was?
Some stilettos, maybe?
Damn straight, sister.
Oh,
he made
Jerry.
her wear a freaking pair of high heels.
Oh, Bev, can I just interject? If Jamie got me to wear a pair of stilettos while doing housework...
Oh, that wouldn't be a pretty sight.
Well,
for me, anyways.
I have such an image of you clumping around like troll-esque.
Yeah,
in your troll-esque ways.
I would not be clumping. Excuse yourself. I'd
just
be
while
stretching.
Cleaning, because you'd be like, oh,
God.
fucking dust. Oh,
Clump.
Craig didn't rinse the dishes. Oh, clump. I'm angry. Oh, the recycling, the organics, they stink.
Jesus, Becky.
Oh,
we get it. Oh my God. I have an image of you like spraining your ankles every 5 seconds like a freaking baby giraffe, not even be able to stand, being like, help me, I can't stand, Jamie. And I'm like, Jesus.
Okay, 1, I never talk like that, but 2, you have a point with the ankles. I probably would be like, oh, I love vacuuming.
Yeah, you ball your face off.
Broken.
If anyone wants to know, Becky's a freaking klutz. She sprained her ankles like 10 times in her life. One time she got stranded in a forest.
I did get stranded in a forest and I had to crawl back to my car. It was humiliating, I must assure everyone. Humiliating. People watched me crawl too. Did anyone ask? No.
No, that's sad. That's savage.
I felt sad and I was
people
in
are
pain.
like, she just can't take the hike. She's exhausted.
My ankle was like the size of a freaking
She's
basketball.
so tired.
I'm like, oh, I
What
can't
a
walk.
loser.
Oh, wow. Is that what you would have thought if you saw someone crawling covered in dirt? Their hair is messed.
Twigs in their hair.
Yeah, like twigs in their hair.
Bright red face.
They got dirt on their pants. They're crawling. Would you not think that, oh, maybe did they fall? Your first instinct would be like, what a freaking loser. You couldn't take the freaking hike? God, do some cardio on your days off, you dummy. Take care of your fucking heart.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be your first instinct.
No. I would ask if they were okay. One time I literally saw a guy pass out on his front porch.
What?
Me and Craig were going for a walk.
What?
Yeah, me and Craig were going for a walk late at night, and he was like all like dead-esque. And Craig, I was like, oh my God, is that guy okay? And Craig's like, I don't want to walk up to a random person on a thing. And I walked up to him and I said, hey man, you okay? And he had passed out while like smoking weed or something.
Oh, shit.
And was so drunk that he forgot to go inside his home. So thank God I did. I was like, you could have froze. I mean, I don't remember it being that cold, but I'm sure he was thankful to not pass out and sleep forever outside on his front porch.
Well, something bad could have happened to him, and if you had found that out, you would have felt really shitty about yourself.
That's right.
Always check on someone, but listen to your instinct.
True.
Well, I'm glad you would have helped me if you saw me freaking crawling.
Yeah, I probably honestly would have. Because you probably looked in need of some assistance. You probably were teary-eyed and...
There was many tears cried that day.
Yeah, I believe it. Anyways.
Enough about me.
Back to the chores.
Oh,
We started this from.
I forgot that's what we were talking about.
Right? So, yeah, he makes her wear a freaking pair of high heels. And as she cleaned, Jerry would take pictures of her.
Freaking perv.
Yeah. However, as their marriage progresses and their children grow older, Darcy starts focusing more on their children. And she would often flat out refuse her husband's unusual sexual demands. Yay for Darcy. You're an independent woman and you do what you want, girl.
That's right.
It was around this time in their lives that Jerry started suffering from migraine headaches as well as blackouts. Jerry wasn't in the best space physically, and when this was combined with the feeling of being rejected by his wife, Jerry began searching for a way to cope and returned to the only way of coping he knew.
No. Stealing shoes and undies.
I'm laughing, but it's just because you're right.
Shoes, hide your undies.
Hide your wife. I'm sorry. Holy fuck, I didn't mean it like that. But like,
yes, you did.
No. Have you ever heard that thing? Hide your wife. Hide your
Hide
kids.
your sister, hide your wife, have your kids.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. But then I realized how dark what I said was. I'm sorry to anyone who thought I was being insensitive there. I didn't intend it. I'm just an idiot.
Yup.
Initially, Jerry did some night prowling in his neighborhood where he would steal women's shoes and their lacy undergarments and would keep all of these mementos locked up in his garage. Jerry put strict regulations on that garage and made it so that not even his wife could enter without gaining permission from him through an intercom system.
What?
Yeah.
That is messed the F up.
I know. If I was his wife, I'd be like, no.
Be like, I'm going to use that garage anytime I freaking want to.
Yeah.
You are
damn
not
straight.
the boss of me.
I would be like,
What
what
you
do
got in there?
What do you got in there?
What are you hiding?
What the hell?
Okay, Bev, if Craig and you were in that position,
yeah,
where would your mind go? What would be the first thing you think he's hiding from you?
I just think that he would be cheating on me.
In the garage. With the intercom system.
Maybe drugs.
Fair.
Yeah. Or cheating on you. I mean, if you need permission to enter, you could hide and stow away women.
You know, my first thought was actually some weird sex slaves, so...
Really?
Yeah, not because I actually think Jamie himself would do that.
I wasn't thinking so.
But if I was not able to go into my own garage, where I do lots of my own projects, I'd be like, what is in there that is so bad that I am not allowed to go in?
Without permission.
Without permission.
I know.
Sex slaves,
I'd
for
be weirded
sure.
out.
You have a giant sex ring, and now I'm suspicious.
Wow. I am slightly surprised that that's where your mind goes, but
I watched a few documentaries.
Each to their own, each to their own. So anyways, after all of this, and she is now communicating with her husband through an intercom system, we can fast forward to about 1967. At this time, Jerry had been walking downtown getting up to his no-good prowling when he sees this outstanding pair of shoes being worn by a woman. He liked them so much that he followed her home, broke into her house while she was sleeping, raped her, and then strangled her to the point of unconsciousness, and then stole her fucking shoes.
This guy's the worst.
He's insane. I honestly don't understand the fascination with the shoes. And that's like what is driving all of this horrific behavior. I just truly can't understand how it started with shoes and what is so appealing about them.
I have no idea. I know it has a lot to do with his mother, like you said. It is really hard to wrap your brain around. But maybe it's because we're rational people. And we don't fully understand.
Amen. So Jerry continues to get pleasure out of committing these types of crimes. And over the next year, Jerry only becomes more obsessed with doing these increasingly more violent and aggressive acts. And on January 26th of 1968, Jerry meets a 19-year-old woman named Linda Slauson. When she knocks on Jerry's door trying to sell encyclopedias.
This door-to-door sales, she walked right to him.
So sad, right? Jerry lured Linda into his home with the ruse of wanting to buy encyclopedias, which makes complete sense.
Yep.
He brought her into his basement and proceeded to knock her unconscious with a wooden plank and then strangled her to death.
Oh my God. That poor girl, she had no idea what was coming.
She was just doing her job. After he kills her, he dressed her with some of the undergarments that he had stolen from other women and put a pair of shoes on her. He arranged her body in a very sexually explicit pose and then used a hacksaw to cut off her left foot, which he would keep in the freezer in his garage. Jerry wanted to keep her foot preserved so he could use her foot to model his collection of high heel shoes. And the creepy thing about this all, aside from the act itself, was that his wife and children were in the house as he was doing this to Linda.
Fucking arrogant is this guy.
Right? To do it while your family's right in the home with you.
He's so brazen, like, this is what I want, and I'm gonna do it. Doesn't matter. Here's my opportunity.
Yeah.
What a turd.
So once he was finished with Linda, he threw her away in the Willamette River. And to this day, Linda's body has never been found.
She went missing?
Never found.
That is the worst case scenario.
Yeah, no kidding. So Jerry does not stop there.
Of course
As
not.
I said, he is a serial killer. And his next attack would occur that same year on November 26th, 1968. Jerry sees a motorist whose car was broken down on the road. He pulls over and happens to come across a woman named Jan Susan Whitney. He offered to drive her to his home and told her that he would call a tow truck once they arrived. However, Jan would never get the chance to call the tow truck because once she was in Jerry's car, he was able to strangle her with a leather strap. He proceeded to rape her and take her body to his house where he attached her to a pulley and left her hanging in his garage for several days. Over the course of the next couple days, he would dress her up and photograph her, and even had sex with Jan's corpse. Once he was done having his way with her, he then proceeded to cut off her breasts and make a resin mold of them. It's rumored that he would use these molds as paperweights. And when he decided to get rid of Jan's body, he tied her to a piece of railroad iron and threw her in the Willamette River along with Linda Slauson's foot as it had started to rot.
Yeah, because that's what human bodies do. They freaking decompose.
Yeah, they're not meant to be mementos that you keep forever. They're not even meant to be cut off and kept as a toy.
That's disgusting.
What he did to Jan is horrendous.
He's a terrible human.
He's a necrophiliac.
Yeah.
Disgusting. and he's like cutting her breasts off. The only solace like I can find in my mind about this is that she was dead before she was like hung and like had all these things done to her. In some way that gives me peace because I know like she's not there.
Yeah, like she didn't have to suffer through that living.
Yeah.
It's still horrible, but yeah, she didn't have to like suffer the pain and the torture.
And just like the anticipation of someone hurting you. Anyways, so that's the only solace I can have, that I'm really sad for these women that are his victims because he's disgusting. Eventually, Jan's vehicle was found at an abandoned rest stop between Salem and Albany, and her body was found on July 27th, 1969, approximately 9 months after she was killed. When they found her, her body was still attached to the railroad iron.
Disgusting.
At least her body was found.
Yes.
Seriously. So that's 2 in 1 year that we know of. And the following year, on March 27th of 1969, a woman named Karen Sprinker, who was only 18 at the time, was approached in a parking lot outside a department store by a man dressed in women's clothing. Spoiler, it was Jerry.
What a guy. Holy shit.
Yeah, he doesn't do the same thing every time. He kind of changes it up, you know? It's like he's experimenting about what his, like, fantasy is, or maybe he has a bunch of fantasies that he's, like, acting out.
Yeah.
I don't know why it always changes. Sometimes, like, serial killers have similar MOs, but he seems to, like,
do different things. I think a bit of it, what it seems to me at least, is that he's a bit opportunistic.
Yeah.
So he kind of takes what he can get. He's not like on the prowl, on the hunt.
Yeah, he has a family. You know, he goes home to his wife and his children. He must have to just take what he can get. When he approaches Karen Sprinker, he's wielding a gun, and he had it pointed directly at Karen. Jerry proceeds to kidnap Karen, and like all his victims before, he takes Karen to his garage, forces her to try on his wide collection of undergarments, and got her to pose while he photographed her. Once that was done, he proceeded to rape her and then strangle her by hanging her from her neck from a pulley set up in the garage. After she took her last breath, Jerry proceeded to desecrate her body with multiple acts of necrophilia.
Ugh.
And very similar to Jan, Jerry cut off Karen's breasts and would make plastic molds out of them. And when it came time for him to get rid of Karen's body, he tied her to a 6-cylinder car engine with nylon cords and threw her into the Willamette River.
I have to say, Bev, how the fuck did he get a 6-cylinder engine with a body tied to it to a river
with no one seeing?
With no one seeing it. That is, I don't want to say skill because it's fucked, but
how do serial killers manage to do these things and just out in the open?
Yeah, like if they used their drive and determination for good, they could have done great things in the world. But they chose to be evil, sick bastards.
That they did, sister. So on May 12th, 1969, Karen's body was found in a tributary called the Long Tom River. And just a month after Karen's body was found, on April 21st, 1969, Sharon Wood, a 24-year-old woman, was held at gunpoint in the basement floor of a parking garage in Portland. This was Jerry's supposed next victim. However, he was unsuccessful at the abduction, so when this didn't work out, he attempted to abduct Gloria Jean Smith on April 22nd, 1969. However, this attempt also didn't work, and when these 2 attempts didn't work out for Jerry, he made a 3rd attempt on the 3rd day, April 23rd.
He tried 3 days in a row?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He just had to get his... He just had to.
He needed to.
He was feeling the urge, and he wasn't going to give up until he got it, which is devastating for a woman named Linda Sully, who was 22 years old. He had found her in a shopping mall parking lot and abducted her. He brought her to his garage where he raped and strangled her to death. Jerry decided to change it up with his victim and played around with her corpse a little bit. However, he decided not to cut off her breasts because they were, quote-unquote, too pink.
Whatever that means.
Also, just as a side note, is it every woman's biggest fear getting abducted in a parking lot garage?
Yes.
Yes, like 100% walk into your car, always terrifying. And this right here, whew, gets my heart beating.
And like these right here are the reasons why we are scared.
No kidding. So after deciding that her breasts were too pink, Jerry then decided that he would attach Linda to an electrical current because he wanted to see the body jump. This tactic failed, so Jerry ended up throwing her away. He attached her to a car transmission with a nylon cord and threw her in the Willamette River. When I read that, where it's like, oh, the thing I wanted for pleasure and that would suffice me right now didn't work, so I'm just going to throw it away like trash. It's like, oh, that didn't work. This toy is broken. Garbage. That's what it feels like to me, and it's so sad because that's a real person.
Yeah, she's not just an object.
For your pleasure.
Yeah.
It's just sad that that's the way he thinks about it, and it's very evident in how he treats his victims, right? That he just
doesn't care.
Sees them literally as an object.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple weeks later, Linda's body was found by a fisherman in the Long Tom River, and her body was still attached to the car transmission. This was the same time at which Karen Sprinker's body was actually found. So their bodies were found at the same time. And it's said that each of these murders were so sexually gratifying for Jerry that once he was done, he would dress up in high heels and masturbate after each murder.
He's getting off on all of this shit.
Yeah,
I mean, we already know that.
And after.
Ugh.
Very odd.
Disgusting.
So that concludes the murders. And so now we're going to kind of get into the police investigation. Because at this point, with all these bodies popping up in the river, the police begin investigating what happened to these women.
Yeah, they find 2 bodies within 1 month.
They're like, what the hell's going on here? You know, and they're all tied to like car parts and like cast away in the same river. So obviously they're probably thinking this is a serial killer. So initially they reach out and interview students from the nearby Oregon State University just to see if they could come up with something. And what they heard was actually really unsettling. A few young women at sororities had been called by a self-proclaimed Vietnam vet who was looking for a date. One of the women had told police that the man had mentioned the bodies in the river and had made some very scary suggestions on how he could strangle her. This Vietnam vet turned out to be
Jerry
Brunos.
Also, what would make a man think that telling a girl that stuff is going to be like, this is how I'm going to get a date? Oh,
That's weird. It's just like, that's all he's thinking about. He's like, this is so normal.
He doesn't even recognize that is creepy and off-putting.
Maybe he was just like getting off on her reaction. Like, oh, you're so sick and twisted.
Or talking about it or something. Like,
yeah, could just re-trigger it. Who knows?
It's not right, though.
It ain't right. So the police convinced one of the girls to set up a fake date with Jerry, and when he arrived for the date, the police took their opportunity to interrogate him, and they quickly decided to investigate further. Jerry was then put in a photo lineup, and one of his escaped victims identified him as their attacker. This really solidified that the detectives were moving in the right direction, and the police worked quickly to get a search warrant for Jerry's house. As you know, Jerry prided himself as an amateur photographer, and this hobby is what really helped detectives in their search because they found dozens of photos of dead women. Some were dressed in different outfits and shoes, some were dismembered, and there were photos of the limbs that had been removed. They also found copper wire that was determined to have been cut with the same tool that had been used to cut the cords to tie the bodies with. They also found the photos of the victims, as well as some of the trophies he had made. At that point, Jerry was taken in for an interrogation where he confessed to all 4 murders and attempted abduction of Sharon Wood and Gloria Smith. Jerry Brunos pled guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder for Jan Whitney, Karen Sprinker, and Linda Sally. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms at Oregon State Penitentiary. Unfortunately, Jerry was only charged with 3 out of the 4 murders because the police had no evidence that he killed Linda Slauson, as he had not taken any photos of her like the other victims. He had only kept her foot, but had to, again, throw it away because it was decomposing, and her body was never found. So he just admitted to it.
But they had no proof, so, I mean, that's sad, but I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, how do you prove that, right?
Oh, of course. It's going to be tough. But
devastating.
3 out of 4, it means, like, he's going to prison for life, so...
He's where he freaking belongs.
The good news is that he actually admitted to it, so her family kind of knows what did happen to her and has some type of closure, right?
Mm-hmm.
After being arrested, Jerry's wife, Darcy, filed for divorce.
Fuck yeah, she did.
That's right, because she's a strong, independent woman. She knows what's right. That's messed up. She's like...
I don't want to be associated with that.
something was going on in there. I knew something was going on in that garage.
Could you,
Lord.
Bev, that just made me think in regards to like, what would our first thought be if Craig and Jamie kept us from our garage?
Yeah.
Imagine finding that out. Whose mind actually goes to something that sinister?
Yours.
Okay, I did actually, yes.
Literally yours.
But in that scenario, never in my mind.
You wouldn't suspect your husband. Like, I doubt you would be like,
he's a
the
murderer.
person I love and have kids with is this sick fuck.
Yeah, like you'd like to think you know that person and that they're not like that.
Of course.
So she must have just been horrified. And to know that was happening under her own roof?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Holy shit. I'm sure there was some element of denial to be like, there's no way that something worse could be going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, like the good woman she is, she decides to change her name as well as her children's names.
They do not need to be ridiculed
or to be associated with
that
this
name.
Sick individual.
Mm-hmm.
She then moves away to start a new life. Initially, though, when all of these things started coming out about her husband, Darcy was charged with aiding and abetting, but those charges were eventually dropped because she had absolutely no idea what her husband was doing. Right. Albeit, you know, the whole garage thing that we were talking about and the intercom thing. It was weird. And of course, that did interest the cops and pique their interest. And it would make any investigator suspicious about her involvement.
You would want to know.
Yeah.
If she had anything to do or knew
100%.
About it.
But I think they came to the same conclusion that we have. It's like, there's no way that would be your first thought. You just wouldn't think that my husband's a murderer up in there. And you probably don't have much to do about it if it's being kept pretty secret from you. So.
Absolutely.
So, of course, even though Jerry was in prison, he's still a sick fuck at heart. It did not keep him from collecting shoe catalogs to feed his fetish.
Ew.
He had piles of them to go through while in jail.
Ugh.
In order to get these, he would contact shoe companies to send them. He claimed that this was his version of porn. So even though porn is prohibited, inmates are allowed to subscribe to any legal magazines. Right. And of course, shoe magazines are legal. So, look.
Yeah. They're definitely legal. That is so horrible. Too bad they couldn't just be like, we know you're a sick fuck, and you are not getting these shoe magazines.
I know. I wish someone would send them a letter and be like, don't send.
Like, red list him on your catalog.
Yeah. Following his conviction, Jerry Brunos went through countless appeals to which the parole board told Jerry in 1995 that he would never be released from prison. He had shown absolutely no remorse for his victims and was and will always be a danger to society. Psychiatrist Michael H. Stone had identified Jerry as having a psychopathic personality, noting his boorish and complete lack of repentance during his incarceration. Detective Jim Burns recounted the moment that he realized that this man, Jerry Brunos, was evil incarnate. He had asked Jerry in an interview, "Do you feel some remorse? Do you feel sorry for your victims, for the girls who died?" Jerry looked him in the eye, crumpled up a half piece of paper that was on the table, and tossed it on the floor and said, "I care about those girls as much as I care about that piece of wadded up paper."
Oh my God, Bev, you called it.
What a fucking lowlife.
He literally sees them as like garbage, like,
seriously,
I'm just feeding my fetish and my desires, and I don't give a flying fart about these women.
Yeah, and we do. I just want to say that right now, we do. And I don't want that sentiment to be one of the final things on our podcast today, because I want those women to be remembered in the probably like in the most amazing way and not as he sees them, because no person should ever feel that they're garbage. So to make ourselves feel so much better in this moment, Becky, I have to tell you that Jerry Brunos was diagnosed with liver cancer and succumbed to his illness on March 28th of 2006. He died in prison and held the title for longest incarcerated inmate. 37 years he spent there, and I hope it was fucking damn horrible. I hope he was treated like garbage.
I hope so too, because he was a piece of shit. POS.
Anyways.
Oh my God.
First serial killer that we've covered. It was intense.
That was heavy.
Well, thank you for listening, Rebecca.
Thanks for sharing, Bev.